Hello everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. I know what y'all thinking, what happened to the green screen thing. Long story, I'll explain to you later next week. Let's just say right at this moment I have a bit of a situation that's causing me a lot of problems. And anger. But I'm still going to do reaction videos for you guys, that's my job. So, we got another Mr. Ballen reaction video, because I'm not going to stop doing it, because I messaged him on Twitter and he gave me permission to react to his videos. So for all of you people who are commenting, saying don't react to his thing, do something else, no. Get a life. Get a life, you people. Get a life. Let's get right into this. This video is Top 3 Places You Can't Go and People Who Went Anyways, Part 6. Are y'all ready? Of course you're ready. Let's go.
About one of the most ridiculously dangerous jobs in the entire world, stick around for today's top story. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel, because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, invite the like button to go on a bike ride with you, and then jab a stick into their front spokes while they're moving. Also, please subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Alright, let's get into today's stories.
Hey everybody, subscribe to Mr. Ballen's channel. Absolutely amazing. Everyone should be subscribing to it. Subscribe to his channel. Also hit the like button, subscribe button for me, and follow me on Twitter at SniperJosh.
Off the
Sniper SMYPER. Now we'll get back into it. Sorry.
coast of mainland Southeast Asia in the Indian and Pacific Oceans lies Indonesia, which is the world's largest archipelago. It's made up of 17,508 individual islands that, if you were measuring from the westernmost point on the westernmost island to the easternmost point on the easternmost island, it would be 5,000 kilometers right across the equator. So it spans 1/8 of the world's circumference. Many of these islands are tiny, uninhabited, and unremarkable. At first glance, you might think that about one particular island that's located 2,500 kilometers north of Australia, and I would tell you the name of this island, but if I did, I would be giving away the island's secret. Living on this
Okay, tease. Give us his little tease. He's giving us a little tease.
island are 2,000 people who are direct descendants of former convicts who were exiled to this island. And they share this island with a particular predator that is endemic to this island, who is a direct descendant of flesh-eating dinosaurs. It can grow up to 10 feet long and weigh up to 350 pounds, and it's
a crocodile. Or an alligator. That's my guess. You might think that I might be wrong, but that's what I guess. It's a crocodile or an alligator.
taste buds are so immaculately developed, it can taste blood in the air up to 9 kilometers away. These creatures are so good at smelling blood and death that anytime there is a burial on this island, they have to put big boulders over the gravesite. Otherwise, these creatures will come running out of the jungle and dig up the freshly deceased and eat them. This creature's bite is savage, and they certainly have the ability to rip a person in two, and in the past they have. But they don't typically bite to kill. They bite to create a massive flesh wound so they can inject venom into the wound site. This allows them to not expend a ton of energy waiting for their prey to die so they can eat it. They basically bite you, poison you, leave, come back within 24 hours, and then they eat you. These creatures are strict carnivores and have a voracious appetite where they will eat up to 80% of their own body weight in a single day. They've been known to bite goats and eat them whole by opening up their mouth and ramming the body.
Well, since they poison them, I don't think it's an alligator now or a crocodile. What is this creature?
The goat into a tree to force it down their throats. But when goats and sheep and buffalo are not enough to feed their appetite, they start eating each other. In fact, cannibalism is so common that their young will hide in the trees for the first 4 years of their life, hiding from their own parents. Because if they're spotted by an adult, they'll be eaten. On top of all this, they can climb, run, and swim faster than a human can. These apex predators are called Komodo dragons, and they live...
Oh, Komodo dragon. Okay, yep. That's danger. That's some dangerous little bitch right there. That's a dangerous little bitch right there. Love to see one, but I'm not gonna run to see one. No, that's never gonna happen. Nope, I ain't gonna, because I'll die. I'll die, and I don't want to die. I'd rather be alive. Thank you very much.
Live on this one island in Indonesia called Komodo Island. In 2009, a 31-year-old fisherman named Mohammed Anwar, who had grown up on Komodo Island and was living there at the time, decided he wanted some fruit. He normally would just eat the apples that were right outside of his house, but he had always been tantalized by the sugar apple trees that were inside of the fenced-off section of Komodo Island, the so-called forbidden section. This section
I'm gonna guess that's the area where the Komodo dragons are, because I'm guessing they would block that off to make sure the Komodos will just come and eat everyone.
was, of course, teeming with Komodo dragons, and so as a result, the locals basically fenced it off and said, we don't go over there, they don't come over here. But Mohammed had always wanted those sugar apples. He'd grown up here, and he never got to have one. And so this day, for whatever reason, he decided, today's the day I'm going to get one. And so he goes over to the fence, and he's looking out, and there's some fairly tall grass, so he can't see what's on the immediate other side of this fence, but it's pretty open, and he can see the trees. They're a little bit off in the distance. And so after looking around and feeling like the coast was clear, he hopped the fence, and he ran out to the sugar apple tree. Mohammed's neighbor, Teresa Tawa, was outside and happened to look over at Mohammed right as he hopped the fence into the forbidden section. And so she ran over to the fence and yelled to him to come back, but he didn't hear her. And so she's standing at the fence, looking out, scanning herself to see if there's any Komodo dragons out there, and she didn't see any. And so she turns her attention to Mohammed, and she's watching him, hoping that he just gets the apples and comes back without incident.
Yeah, because I'm guessing if anything happens to him, he's gonna be a target, because there's no way he'll get back.
As she's watching, she sees he's reaching out and extending his arm just far enough. He wants to get one more apple, and he loses his footing, and he falls to the ground. From her perspective, she couldn't see Mohammed on the ground because the tall grass obscured him. So she didn't know if he's laying there unconscious, or if he's just rolling around and he's in pain and he's about to stand up. And so she's just looking anxiously, hoping he stands up soon. And then she hears the sound of two Komodo dragons running through the tall grass. She can see the grass moving.
Oh, man. Oh, no, he might have cut himself. If he's bleeding, that'll cause them to show up, right? So, because they want blood and they'll cause a wound. So if he's bleeding or has a cut on him, they're going to go right for him.
As these two massive creatures are running and grunting at full speed towards Mohammed. Mohammed, when he fell, he had cut himself.
Yeah.
And they smelled his blood. And
do I know or do I know? Yes. Do I know or do I know? Ha!
they charged over, and Teresa could only scream and yell for help as these two Komodo dragons ate Mohammed. The authorities were able to get out there pretty quickly, and they were able to get the Komodo dragons off before they actually consumed him, but he was already dead. Today, you can actually go to Komodo Island as a tourist, but it costs you $1,000 to get a membership fee, and then once you get there, you're only allowed to be in a couple different sections that are totally regulated, and you're really not anywhere near the Komodo dragons, because it really is extremely dangerous.
Yep. They ain't gonna want a bunch of tourists dying. They probably cost you $1,000, bitch. You gonna be paying. They want that. They need that money.
On the evening of June 20th, 1965, 4 high school friends set off for a remote desert location about 90 miles northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, that was within the very famous Death Valley. They arrived at their destination, which, if you didn't know any better, would just look like the middle of nowhere in the desert. But to them, they knew exactly where they were. And so they parked their car, they got out, and they began unloading very heavy underwater diving equipment and began walking it up a nearby hill. The group was made up of 19-year-old Paul Giancontieri, his brother-in-law, 20-year-old David Rose, 19-year-old Bill Alter, and his younger brother Jack, who was 16 years old. As these 4 boys walked their diving equipment up this hill, they were hit with sign after sign after sign that was telling them, do not go any farther, turn around. They made it to the top of the hill, and they were met with a huge fence, which once again said, do not go any farther. Without any...
What? Okay, so why is this area so fenced off and blocked? Why is there so many signs saying don't go any farther? Why am I missing? What's missing? I need more context. Mr. Ball, hit me with the context I need.
Any hesitation, they went right under the fence and began walking down the other side, which was a very steep 30-foot rocky slope that led down to this very narrow strip of water that was the entrance to a very famous underwater cave called the Devil's Hole. Their plan was to dive all the way down to the bottom of the cave, which was at 325 feet. So they get down to the bottom of the hill and they begin putting on their scuba gear, and Jack, the youngest, he's like, you know what, guys, I'm having second thoughts. I don't want to do this anymore. And they're like, hey, suit yourself. And so Jack volunteers himself to sit on the outside and be their lookout. The other three, Paul, David, and Bill, they're totally still doing this dive.
I'm guessing they'll look out for in case someone comes, but in the end, I guess they wouldn't be able to let them know, because they'd be like 300 feet underwater. So I don't know what you're to look out for. I don't know. I don't understand what you're looking out for.
And so they put on the rest of their equipment, they hop in the very warm water. It stays at about 92 degrees Fahrenheit year-round inside of Devil's Hole. They check their flashlights a couple of times. And
if you're in Death fucking Valley, it's hot as fucking hell probably, so, yeah.
Ready, they signal to each other, and they begin their descent down into the dark abyss that is the Devil's Hole. So for the next couple of hours, Jack just sat on the surface, waiting for his brother and his two friends to return. And just after midnight, David and Bill did return, but Paul didn't. And so when David and Bill got to the surface, they asked Jack, hey, have you seen Paul? Because we got separated on the way up, and we figured he was already up here. And Jack said, no, it's just you two. I haven't seen Paul. And so David and Bill look at each other, and they know they have a problem, and they're like, we got to go back down. And so they put the regulators back in, and they turn and start swimming down. Bill would say when they went back down to look for Paul, Dave was leading, and Dave was going really fast to the point where Bill couldn't keep up with him. And you got to remember, it's pitch black down there.
You can never. You have to always. That's the thing that's the problem with diving this deep, is communication gets lost really quickly, so they're unable to communicate with each other, explaining what's going on. They're unable to tell each other what is going on, and due to that, shit happens. People get lost. Stuff starts happening. Not good. Not good.
And Bill's got his flashlight. That's the only way he can see Dave. And Dave was creating separation and getting farther and farther away. Bill had no way to stop him, and at some point he lost him. Dave was just gone. And so Bill, not wanting to turn this into an even bigger problem, stopped where he was and went back to the surface. And he and his brother Jack just sit there anxiously waiting for Dave and Paul to return, but they don't. And so at some point Jack went and got authorities. When the police got the report about the two missing divers inside of Devil's Hole, I'm sure on some level they were like, that's why the signs are there. You're not allowed.
Yeah, I was at that point just like, well, you see the signs. We can't really do it. Like, you're not supposed to be in here. It's your fault. You went in here. Like, we're gonna help you, but frig, man, just listen to the signs.
To dive in there, but they put that aside, and instead they contacted a guy named Jim Hoots, who was a professional diver who regularly dove inside of Devil's Hole, so he's very familiar with it, and they got him on scene within a couple hours to go looking for these guys. And originally, the hope was Paul and David had found their way into a section of Devil's Hole called Brown's Room, which was this big air pocket that perhaps in an emergency situation they had found their way in there, and now they're trapped. So Jim and his dive partner get to the edge of Devil's Hole, they put on their gear, they hop in the water, and they begin their descent. And it's totally dark, they got their lights, and they go down about 90 feet to where the tunnel basically funnels down to a point. And through this point, you have to wriggle through and push through. Once you get through that, you enter into this massive chasm that if you shine your light in any direction, the walls are so far away that initially it looks like you're shining a light into infinity. It's this massive, massive space. But for them to get to Brown's room, the first place they're going to look for these guys, they needed to push through that little funnel and then immediately turn left and track the ceiling until they find a tunnel that goes back up again. And that is the tunnel that's very claustrophobia inducing. It's very tight. That if you take it 90 feet back up, you get to Brown's room, and that's that big air pocket. And so Jim and his dive partner, they make their way up this tunnel, they get to the air pocket, and there's no divers. And so they go back down through.
Damn, so since they're not in the air pocket, most likely they're still underwater, in the water, and most likely my guess would be they're both dead, but like, damn, what happened to both those guys?
through the tunnel back into that huge chasm, and instead of going back to the surface, they knew that if they didn't find them in the air pocket, they were going to go down a little ways and see if they could find them on this one area called the lower ledge. And so the lower ledge was just a rocky outcropping that was about halfway down to the bottom of the cave. It was a natural break point before you went to the bottom. And so as they're descending in this infinity chasm, Jim is shining his flashlight in every direction looking for signs of these guys, and at some point his light picks up a reflection on the lower ledge. And so they get down to the lower ledge, and that reflection was from a dive mask, the glass of the dive mask. It was sitting right on the lower ledge, and then next to it was a single dive fin. So Jim and his dive partner, they pick these items up, they go back up to the surface, and they confirm with Jack and Bill Alter that yes, that mask and that fin belonged to Dave and Paul. And then afterwards they say to the search party, look, we were in Brown's room and they weren't in there, and so there's nowhere else they could be alive, and by now they've run out of air. And so that, mixed with the fact that we're finding their equipment strewn about the chasm, it's safe to say they're more than likely deceased. Jim and his...
That is heartbreaking to find that these guys just went here and went to go do it and just died. And the only reason that one dude, there was two people think, one because he knew better and went up, and the other one because he just chickened out and didn't want to do it. Those are the reason two men are alive out of the four. It's because one knew better and one chickened out. Well, if someone tells you don't do something, please just listen to it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Dive partner said, look, we'd like to go back in and go all the way to the bottom. We stopped at the lower ledge, so we don't know what's down there. We anticipate we'll be able to find their bodies, and we can at least confirm they're down there and then shift to a body retrieval mission. So Jim and his dive partner get back in the water. They go down the 90 feet to that little section you have to wriggle through to get into the chasm. Once they're inside, they keep going down. They pass the lower ledge, and they go all the way down to 325 feet. Now, this cave is huge, and the floor bottom is huge. But it's not so huge that you wouldn't be able to spot two bodies that have just recently landed down here. And so Jim and his partner are scanning their light across the bottom, which is relatively flat. You can see pretty far because of how clear the water is, and they're not seeing anything on the bottom. They're looking all over the place, and there's no bodies, there's no equipment, there's nothing. And they're thinking, how are we missing this? How are we not
What happened to these two bodies then? Where are they?
able to see this? And it was at this point that Jim noticed a little hole in the bottom of the cave floor, barely big enough for a full-size person with tanks to fit through, that he hadn't seen before. And so they make their way over to it, and Jim says right when he was on the edge, he felt a fairly strong current being pulled past his legs down into this hole. It was almost like this was a drain on a bathtub and someone had pulled the plug, and now all the water is draining into this little hole. And so Jim and his dive buddy kind of push themselves back to make sure they don't get sucked in, and Jim pulls out a weighted piece of string that goes out to 932 feet. And he would use this if there was ever a tunnel that he wanted to go down and he wanted to size up how deep it was. He would extend the line and he would let it fall until it hit something, and then he would stop it, and on the line were marks of how deep it was. And so he let this line go inside of this hole, and it went all the way down to 932 feet without touching any surface, meaning it's at least 932 feet deep from that point down. So Jim just pulls his line back up and he looks at his dive partner and he's like, yeah, no, we're not going down there. Not only were they not equipped to go that deep, they also both knew if we go in this hole, there's a good chance we won't be able to get back out again because the current is so strong. So Jim and his dive partner go back to the surface and they say, look, we couldn't find their bodies. But what we think happened is they developed nitrogen narcosis, where you're in this sort of drunken state, you don't really know what's going on around you, and that suction slowly pulled them into this hole, and they weren't really aware of their surroundings, and they didn't stop themselves before they got pulled in, and then it was too late, and they were pulled down into oblivion. To this day, they've never found their bodies, and scientists still don't know how deep that hole is, but in 2012, there was an earthquake in Mexico, so 2,000 miles away from Devil's Hole, that caused a tsunami to come through Devil's Hole. I don't know how that actually works, but the scientists say that's what happened. And so scientists believe that hole leads to an underground ocean that connects to other parts of the world as far away as 2,000 miles. Today, diving is still strict.
So, yeah, you will never find those bodies. That's what that means. You're never finding them ever.
Forbidden inside of Devil's Hole unless you're a scientist, and they stay far away from that hole at the bottom.
That is insane, man. Devil's Hole seems like the most insane place ever. Oh God, what looks below, my friend? What does look below?
Pearly Beach is this beautiful little beach town in South Africa that's very popular amongst tourists. There's lots of snorkeling and whale watching and horseback riding on the beach. But behind this beautiful vacation town, down this bumpy access road going inland, you come to this unmarked settlement called Uluxulwane that is like the opposite of a vacation. Basically, everyone there is completely impoverished. Beyond some seasonal cleaning jobs and the occasional gardening job, there's virtually no work in that area. As a result of this crushing poverty, the men in this town have had to take on one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. It's called abalone poaching. Abalone are a very rare type of shellfish that are illegal to be captured and sold, but there's this booming illicit market for them, their primary customer being the Chinese, who view eating abalone as a status food. Abalone can only be harvested by hand, and one of the very few places you can find them is on Dyer Island, which is 3 kilometers off the coast of Pearly Beach. And so the men of Uluxulwane have become the primary labor force to go collect these shellfish for this illegal trade. On a really good night, these Uluxulwane poachers will come back and make the equivalent of a couple hundred US dollars. And they'll use that money to support their entire family, mom, dad, grandparents, kids, nieces, nephews, everybody, because nobody else can work. This is like the one thing that
It's interesting that doing this illegal thing is the only way these people in this area can work, because you immediately think, oh well, I mean they're doing something illegal, but you'll do what you have to do if it's illegal just to make ends meet. That's how, it's how you live. Fortunately, there's times in this scenario, well, that's just what has to happen.
Generates money. So you're probably wondering, what makes this particular job one of the most dangerous in the world? Well, I can tell you it has nothing to do with the actual act of removing abalones. That's pretty straightforward. It's the creature that lurks below you the whole time you're in the water pulling abalones off the reef that at any moment might come up and strike.
This is a tough one, because this could be crocodiles again, alligators again, sharks. Those are the main 3. I'm going to guess it's a shark, though. I'm going to guess shark.
Early morning hours of September 3rd, 2017, a group of Uluxulwane poachers met on Pearly Beach to make their way out to Dyer Island. Now, because they are so poor, they do not have the money to afford renting a boat to take them out to Dyer Island, and so they swim out to Dyer Island. It takes them about 3 hours to swim out there, and then they stay there for 3 hours, going down on a breath hold over and over again, pulling abalones off the reef, and then they swim 3 hours back. And so this particular day, the poachers are pulling up their wetsuits, getting ready for this swim, and they're chatting nervously with each other, doing their best not to talk about the one thing they were all terrified of, which is what's swimming out in that water. One of the men on the beach was a 34-year-old named Zalela, who had taken a break from abalone poaching because of how dangerous it was, but he had just found out his wife was pregnant, and so he needed the extra cash, so he was going with them. South Africa is home to the largest population of great white sharks in the world. Specifically, there is a stretch of water between Dyer Island and the shores of Pearly Beach called Shark Alley that is the highest concentration.
I am on a roll today. I got the thing that run to someone with a cut, and now I guess sharks. I'm on a freaking roll. Yeah.
Of great white sharks in the world. So every time the Uluxulwane poachers swam out to Dyer Island, they had to swim over Shark Alley, and then once at the reef, removing the abalones, that's where all the sharks would hang out, because they would eat the seals that were in the area. So there's sharks all around them there, and then they would swim back over Shark Alley. So all in, they would be spending 9 hours around some of the most ferocious apex predators in the world.
Oh, no, I'm good. I don't want to be a part of that. I'm good. Have fun, guys. Have fun doing your little poaching and that. I don't care how dangerous it is. Yeah, I ain't doing that. No, I'm good.
So that morning, Zalela and the other poachers make it out past the breakers, and they head out to this stretch of kelp that covered the first third of their trip. Basically, they would stay in this big kelp field because they said the sharks didn't like to come in the kelp. But at some point, they reached the end of the last bit of kelp. And what was next was this open water swim up to Dyer Island. This would be the most dangerous part. And Zalela was the first person that was going to be entering the open water. And the way they did it is in the open water, they would intentionally space themselves out by a couple of meters in case one of them got attacked. The others would have a chance to swim away and avoid being caught up in the feeding frenzy. So
Interesting that they thought this way. They're like, okay, let's all separate from each other, all not be near each other. That way, if any of us get attacked, we all others have a chance to escape. Interesting. There's a thought process. No one usually thinks like that. They just all want to hang out in a group. Like,
So Zalela leaves the kelp field and begins swimming across the open water. And then after a little bit, the next poacher, he begins swimming. And they had this practice where they would constantly be looking around and counting all the people they were with. Because these shark attacks, when they happened, a lot of times they would get pulled under the water and you wouldn't hear it at first. And if there was a head missing, you stopped and you stopped everybody else and you made sure no one was being attacked by a shark. And so as this second swimmer is swimming along, he's counting and he's got a full head count. And then he looks, and Zalela's missing. And he yells for the others to stop. And as they're kind of poking their heads up to see what's going on, Zalela reemerges in the mouth of a great white shark that is violently shaking him side to side. And Zalela's screaming out, and the other poachers know they can't do anything to help him. And so they turn and they swim as fast as they can. And all they hear behind them is the sudden scream as his face would come out of the water and then go back down again, and the violent thrashing of fins as a feeding frenzy began. And so the others make it back to the kelp field, and one of them had a cell phone wrapped in rubber, and so he pulls that out and he calls one of the poacher boats, because even in an emergency they don't call the police because they can't jeopardize their livelihood. And so they call a poacher boat that comes over, scoops them up out of the water, and then the remains of Zalela that came to the surface, they were able to pull those into the boat and bring.
that's insane. And no matter what happens, they will not call police because they don't want their business of getting those things to be jeopardized. Man, that's messed up. That is messed up.
Bring them back for.
I 100% get it. Don't think I don't get it. I 100% get why they won't do that, because that's their way, again, their way of making income. It's just insane that, like, no matter what, they just won't call police.
Funeral. According to police reports, in the last 2 decades, 5 Aluxulwany poachers have been killed by sharks. But to the Aluxulwany locals, they say that count is not even close to accurate, because a lot of times when people do get attacked and killed by sharks, they don't report it to the police because they don't talk to the police. And so they think it's probably closer to 2 or 3 dozen people that have been killed by sharks. When interviewed, an Aluxulwany poacher has said anytime there's a shark attack, whether it's fatal or not, they usually just take a week or 2 off and then go right back in the water. Poverty has given them no other choice. So that's going to do it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the.
That is insane that poverty has drove them down that way. That is freaking insane. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all enjoyed watching this video. Thank you all for watching. Hit the like button, hit subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you for the next one.